Well, welcome everybody to the latest in our series of London interviews. And today we're joined by Kris Vedat, the new CEO of SmartSea, to explore why the maritime sector is on the brink of a major digital transformation. And as many of you may, if you've been following the media and following what SmartSea are doing, it's a phenomenal initiative. They're bringing the excellence that's been happening in the aviation industry and bringing it into the maritime sector. And really, as ports face congestion and rising customer expectations, and for the global shipping industry et al., end-to-end digitalization is essential to improve efficiency and sustainability. And among other things, I'll be talking to Kris and pushing Kris on how digitalization in the industry is changing. But we'll also see how SmartSea is revolutionizing sectors such as ferry and cruise, inspired by this aviation-level technology as provided by SmartSea's parent company, SETA, to make journeys seamless from shore to ship. Kris will come in and elaborate, no doubt, on this. When we all go in and book our flights, you go and see your loved ones in New Zealand and you go via about 4 different destinations and you book online and you get you download your boarding pass and then you go in and you check in your bags and you hope that they're going to turn up in Wellington or wherever it is down in New Zealand. And it does, and everything works and everything talks to each other. That's SETA. And that's phenomenal. It's been something that's been brought together with everything over 400 airlines. Kris, I sound as if I'm your PR man here, and I'm actually selling this for you. But look, welcome. And first of all, thank you very much for getting involved with London International Shipping Week. We're only a matter of 2 and a bit months away now, starting to intensify, and it's going to be an amazing time. And I think with the industry coming in, welcome. Did I get the intro okay as far as introducing you and SmartSea?
I think you did a very good job, Sean. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me on this podcast. I'm very excited about this podcast and London International Shipping Week.
Oh, absolutely. Delighted to do so. Do you want to start really by just talking a little bit about what SmartSea is all about? And certainly with the SmartSea Vision, which is this platform. What are you trying to achieve through SmartSea Vision?
SmartSea is a provider of product, services and technology solutions to the maritime industry. And that is ultimately what SmartSea does. Is we provide all of these services, products and solutions to the maritime industry, inspired by aviation-grade technology. And then what we're now doing is that we recognize in the industry there's a massive gap when it comes to having a marketplace where everyone in the maritime industry can come to utilize products, applications. So what we're doing at SmartSea is that we've developed something called SmartSea Vision, which is a maritime marketplace platform. And on that platform, we'll host multiple products, some of which will be developed by SmartSea, some of which will be third party, but all resting on a common platform, allowing ship owners, ship managers, ports to access these products easily and on a trusted platform, as well as ensuring that data is secure and actually then use that data as well. So this is quite a revolutionary solution that's not been done in the maritime industry thus far, because it allows us to then start looking at things like standardisation of data, messaging exchange, the ability to easily exchange data between various different parties.
Can you give us an idea of what some of these products are? Because will they be proprietary? Will they be, bespoke? I mean, what form are they taking?
So there'll be a variety of products that so they will be products that are used to provide operational efficiency in the maritime industry. For example, we will provide crewing products. We'll provide planned maintenance solutions. There will be e-com platforms. There will be things like automation for processing invoicing. There will be messaging exchange products or integration products. So there'll be a variety of products, and there are quite a few that will enable shipping companies or shipping owners or ship managers to run their operations more efficiently and be able to then really recognize some of these tools like automation, AI far easier into their organization.
I mentioned in my intro about the advances that have been made by SETA within the aviation industry. We take it all for granted. It's all seamless. We expect our bags to turn up when they do and for the boarding passes to be read, in every destination that we go to or whatever. How easy or difficult a project is it to bring that type of technology into the shipping industry through what SmartSea is doing here? Because, shipping is very fragmented. You've got different sectors, you've got owners, you've got charterers, you've got people who are early adopters, very, very enthusiastic and aggressive about embracing AI. Then you've got ship owners who are hardly even going down the digital front at the moment, or digital route at the moment. And then you then got the port agents and the insurers and all of those aspects. It's an opportunity and a challenge. Can you put it into perspective?
I think it is a challenge. And I think how I can rationalize that is that the aviation industry commercially is probably about 75 years old, whereas the maritime industry is centuries old from a commercial perspective. So, when SETA was born, it had the advantage of being at the sort of the birth of commercial aviation, which allowed it to kind of standardize and structure early on. Whereas from the maritime perspective, as you alluded to, it's siloed, there's lots of different players. So that kind of standardization hasn't been in place. But what I recognize now is there is a change in mindset in the industry where standardization is becoming something that is becoming far more accepted in the maritime industry, and also recognize that it's needed. And I think if we start looking at things like emissions and sustainability, where emission reporting needs to be now completed from a regulatory perspective, standardization helps that process. And I think this is where I see SmartSea as an important player in this process, because taking the learnings from aviation and SETA, how they standardize data and message and exchange between all the various parties within that process. You mentioned earlier that, you can fly from London to New Zealand and your bag will arrive in New Zealand, even though it's maybe gone over 3 or 4 different carriers. That's because of that standardization of data that exists within the aviation industry, because of the message and exchange that SETA owns and manages for the aviation industry, allows that seamless data transfer and that ability to be able to move bags from different carriers quite easily, that you're able to, move from one plane to another without there being any issues. And I think using that mindset of how that standardization of data, how those systems enable that interactivity is what we can apply then to the maritime industry. Because in the maritime industry, we're incredibly siloed, right? So, if I look at the offshore industry as an example, the vessel is siloed, how they move the cargo, the shore base is siloed, the cargo coming from either the warehouse or from another mode of transport is siloed. And then you can replicate that into the passenger industry or the leisure industry, where your cruise industry, you don't see the flow of passengers moving from the plane to the vessel because it's all siloed and not integrated. Whereas I think if we have an integration and we allow this integration between all the parties and standardize the data to allow that, it becomes a far more optimized solution.
The obvious question in all of this is, what has made SETA succeed? And I guess it is the fact that you've had buy-in from the 400 airlines. So they've all seen, they all know that they need to collaborate and cooperate, because Sean Moloney is going to go on a flight and I'm going to be using 3 of them and I'm going to 4 airports. So they know they need to. That buy-in from the airlines is very, very important. Do we need that buy-in from that very, very fragmented shipping industry?
I think you need the buy-in for sure. And I think obviously buy-in helps because it helps with the change management process as well. There is a change management element where we're asking the industry to do something different to what they were doing yesterday. So I think buy-in helps with that. I think one difference in the aviation industry as well is from a regulatory perspective, they enforce this. So in aviation, you have the various different regulatory boards that are enforcing these buy-ins, these standards, this data exchange. Whereas in the maritime industry, we don't really have that. IMO is starting to look at these standards and starting to recognize that, but it's quite slow. So I think it's a combination of buy-in from all the players involved in that process, as well as a regulatory buy-in as well, or in regulatory enforcement, because I think it needs to be seen. And also I think there's an element of it's for the greater good. I know that sounds a little bit, but it is for the greater good because there's everyone then benefits. And I think we need to then recognize that for the greater good, we need to do these things because it will improve the maritime industry as a whole. We can't look at this as individuals or individual companies. We need to look at this across the board for everything.
Now looking at, as you said, shipping is very, very fragmented, and but also there's a raft of technologies out there. People are using, 99 different crew management systems or vessel monitoring system or ECDIS. It always amazes me about ECDIS in the sense of, that there's no standardization in ECDIS at all. You've got different systems going on and whatever. Again, is that easy to then integrate into a platform? So, my system, V Group or BSM or Columbia, it doesn't matter what we're using. We can all still talk to each other through the platform.
Yeah, so the platform will be designed for integration purposes. So it will basically allow any system to come into the platform and then that data translation to occur at the platform level. So we call that like an integration layer. And that is one of the purposes of the platform, to allow this interconnectivity, this integration between all parties, because we want to be inclusive. So we don't want to exclude. We want to ensure that we include everyone in this process. So yeah, there are no barriers to accessing the platform. There are obviously some technical solutions that need to be applied, but it's designed to be able to integrate to everyone. And also, I think I just want to pick up on a point you raised earlier about the various different levels of maturity that exist. So again, we want to be incredibly inclusive as well. So, if you have your own system, you can interface into the platform. If you don't have a system, there'll be applications or products on the platform that allow you to enter data in as well. So it won't exclude anyone. It will be very inclusive. And we want to ensure that we can enable the less mature shipping companies as well as be part of the more mature operations as well.
Looking at the interaction you've had with the industry, I'm going to come on in a second to the cruise and ferry side, because I think I want to use that maybe as a case study as well. But when you're talking to the industry, what's the sort of feedback and where are you starting to see successes?
I think we're certainly starting to see successes where I think everyone buys into the SmartSea Vision platform, that we need to be better at collaborating and sharing data. We need to be having far easier solutions to the maritime industry that are trusted, that are a bit more turnkey, that provide real value to owners and operators alike. Yeah. So I think everyone buys into that. I think everyone buys into standardization, and then knowing that standardization will improve the industry overall. So we're seeing a lot of traction now where SmartSea Vision and the concept behind SmartSea Vision is really getting buy-in from the industry, because, it improves operational efficiency, it improves security, how we can start looking at how we can integrate not just the maritime, but airside, land, having sort of the integration for cargo, for security. All of these things are of real value to various different players in the supply chain process. So we are really seeing a lot of interest and a lot of excitement around the SmartSea Vision concept.
Now, coming on to cruise and ferry side, and we talked about, that there's the idea of going into an airport, checking your bags in, and then going over to Miami, getting out of the airport, getting in your taxi to go to the cruise terminal, getting onto your cruise ship and going into your cabin, and there's your bag. Just sounds amazing, and that I guess is a way that this whole process would work. Can you talk to me a little bit about the sort of ferry and cruise terminal experience? Because I think you had an example through Singapore Cruise Terminal or Cruise Centre, didn't you?
We did, and in Singapore Cruise Centre, we deployed aviation technology within Singapore Cruise Centre to ultimately improve the passenger processing experience. So I think one of the things that is noticeable in the cruise and ferry industry is that the passenger processing experience is far from optimized. When I'm talking about from the very simple things of ticketing, which is still very much counter-based, and there are no real sort of automated counter machines where you're able to self-service, to the whole processing of boarding from a biometric perspective. None of that really exists in the cruise and the ferry industry. It's still a very manual process. And what we saw in Singapore Cruise Centre, where we deployed self-service ticketing solutions, biometric solutions, we were able to improve the passenger processing experience by about 30%, i.e. the time it takes to board passengers, which is a massive improvement. So, it allows the whole turnaround of the ferries far quicker and more efficiently, because you're able to get those passengers on far quicker. And you're also improving the whole customer satisfaction experience, or the passenger experience, because they're no longer having to wait in these waiting areas. They can use self-service, so there's less queuing. You're able to then use some of the technology around auto check-in of baggage. So again, these technologies that are very much tried and tested in the aviation industry can be very easily tweaked for a maritime experience. And that's what we're doing now. So as I said, Singapore Cruise Centre, and we are now looking and working with other cruise and ferry terminals to deploy the same solutions as well.
Because I think you're right there. When you look at the technology that is available, when it starts to be rolled out, and I think, again, going back to the aviation element, I think some of the London airports now, Luton or whatever, you don't need to take anything out of your bags. You don't need to take liquids out. You don't need to take your laptops. It just goes through and, thank you very much. The whole process is completely speeded up, less hassle. And that, as you rightly say, that experience, customer experience, is really, really important. When you take it into, when you look at shipping, you've got the passenger element on the cruise side. Then you've then got the handling of the cargoes on the port side for the freight side of shipping, the cargo side of shipping. So it's really, really important. Coming on to digitization of ports, is enough being done there, Kris? I mean, where are you seeing opportunities there with regards to ships coming into port, lots of documentation? Do ships want to be hanging around in port, with emissions? Do they want to go in and out as quickly as possible? How can the process be made more efficient? Any thoughts on that?
I think port-side operations aren't optimized to the level they should be. And I think I think it also really depends on the vertical that we're talking about. So from a containerization or a liner perspective, I think they're reasonably optimized, but I think there's still opportunities. But when you're still talking about the port services or the services surrounding the port, then there's some optimization that can be done. And I think one thing there are a few elements that I think will advance this moving forward. I think, again, I keep going on about it, but data and standardization of data will improve the ability for the various parties involved. Because a port operation has the vessel, it has the port authorities, it has the cargo handlers, it has, if it's cargo, and you've got the people bringing the cargo in, you've got the pilots. There are so many different parties involved in that. And at the moment, because of the lack of standardization, there's various different formats, and you're having those challenges of being able to then bring that data into various systems and then optimize it. So I think standardization is obviously one thing that can help with that, but also the ability to optimize and have things like AI to enable those optimizations. So, for example, being far more efficient on knowing what, say, tugs and barge operations or tug operations you would require in the port when a vessel is coming in, knowing when the pilot needs to be there. Are you able to then do that job with 2 tugs or 3 tugs based on optimizing that movement, ensuring that the vessel or the operational vessels or the port vessels that are moving around there are optimized in regards to a fuel efficiency perspective? Again, not a lot of that's being done because I don't think there's real-time planning. I think the planning that takes place at the moment in port operations, it is the vessels come in the evening, they plan in the morning, and they don't take any consideration of real-time events that are occurring. So a far more focused on real-time planning would really benefit and optimize those port operations.
So it's as much about the technology and being available, but also changing mindsets, changing working practices.
I think it's definitely a mindset change and adoption of technology. And I think one thing that is also important is that it's the enabling technologies as well. So a lot of the things that we talk about, sort of real-time optimization, it has been a challenge historically, because in order to do these things, you really need to communicate or have communications on board the vessels, as well as at quayside operations in some locations that don't have traditional communication like, fiber. So when you start looking at the technologies that are emerging nowadays, like LEO and then the improvement of 5G, you're able now to very cheaply and efficiently deploy communication solutions in locations and on vessels that were somewhat more challenging beforehand, which then enable you to deploy technology solutions on board. Because most of the solutions that we talk about require a form of communication in order to do so. It requires data from the vessel. It requires, feedback from a system to be able to then optimize. So it needs that communication link. So I think what's important now, and we're seeing a big trend, is that LEO, Starlink, is enabling these solutions on board vessels and as well in quayside operations as well, because it's more cost effective now. So it's less of a barrier to entry to deploy systems.
Starlink are without doubt coming in and disrupting the industry, in a number of different ways and providing lower cost solutions, etc. So you've got the enablers there, you've got the technology. looking at the shipping industry itself and maritime, because this is, ports as well as everything else, is it all agile enough to embrace these opportunities? I mean, or are you going to you almost certainly get bottlenecks going on? I mean, talk to me about the agility of the industry to respond.
I think there's various levels of degree of agility, right? Some are more agile than others. And I think this is where someone like SmartSea can come in to be that enabler. Because again, going back to the SmartSea Vision platform, what we are trying to do is enable those solutions to be easily deployed for the maritime industry, because we're hosting it on a platform. It's a marketplace. You will then just go and select the products that you need. We're managing the back-end solution. We're managing that from a best practice perspective, from services that you'll get on there, from security. So solutions like SmartSea Vision reduce or remove the barriers that existed beforehand, because now, just with communication as an example, you can access these applications, these solutions far easier without any kind of setup that's required. It's more like a cloud-based SaaS solution, which is really removes a lot of the barriers that have been in place historically.
I mean, without a doubt, this is a very, very exciting initiative here, and I mean, SmartSea Vision, I think, looking at the opportunities there, I think is very, very exciting, and it's what shipping needs, without a doubt. It needs to be integrated and have that data sharing and what have you. What would you like to be telling me if we were sitting down at the next London International Shipping Week in 2027, Kris? In 2 years' time, what would you like to be telling me that has happened in the ensuing 2 years or the previous 2 years?
I would have really liked to see that the industry has started to standardize certain data formats, like the noon report or the daily report, that there is a standard that has been accepted by the industry. I would like the industry to really embrace digitization and not be afraid of it, because I think there's always been these fear factors. So I'd really like to see the industry not only, making these changes, but also embracing them and using them in day-to-day operations. And like standardization of the noon report, I would love to see that being enforced by IMO onto the industry as a whole. I would love to see then products like SmartSea Vision really being taken up by industry, and then that being adopted as a standard for messaging exchange to allow this integration between all the parties. So in 2 years, that's what I would love to see.
Now we've got this very exciting and amazing week going to be happening in a couple of months' time. To what extent are you looking forward to it? I mean, what are you hoping to get out of London International Shipping Week? You've got the decision makers coming into London. There's going to be a lot of opportunity there for networking and educating, I suppose, the industry as to what SmartSea can actually achieve for them.
Yeah, I really look forward to. I'm involved in some various different digitization programs, and I'm really looking forward to explaining to the industry what we want to do and how we want to get there. And I'd love to, I'm looking forward to listening to my peers and understanding my peers' point of view on that as well. But also, really trying to ingrain the benefits of doing sort of standardization of data, a platform, a marketplace, into the mindset of the industry, and really trying to articulate the benefits that can occur as a whole. As I said before, I maintain that, for the greater good of the industry, this is the way that we need to go. We need to look to other verticals like aviation, see how well it works there, and adopt it into our industry, in the maritime industry. I think we really need to look towards other industries, and we don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel, and then understand how they've done it and how we can then take those learnings into our industry. And that's definitely something I want to promote London International Shipping Week for sure.
Now, you just come in as the new CEO, replaced Julian Panter, who has gone on to other positions. What are you going to be bringing into the role then, Kris, with your background and your experiences and what have you?
I think what I bring to the role is that we are now, SmartSea stage is in delivery stage. So we are now delivering solutions and products to the industry. And from my experience in the past and the various roles that I've had, this is where my strengths lie, is delivering solutions that are best in class to the maritime industry, and using my experience in the maritime industry to ensure that what we are delivering is fit for purpose. So from a CEO perspective, this is what I will be focusing on quite heavily, is ensuring that we're delivering on what we've been saying to the industry that we can do.
Brilliant. Well, Kris, thank you very, very much indeed for your time today. It's fascinating. As I said, I'm a massive supporter of SmartSea. I think there's a lot of great opportunities ahead, and certainly the value you're going to be bringing to the shipping industry, I think, is going to be significant. But I really look forward to catching up with you during LSW. And again, thank you very much indeed for your support as well. It's going to be a good week. But thank you very much for your time today, Kris. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Sean. I've enjoyed it.